Welcome to a raid guide to Mistweaver Monk in the War Within Season 1. My name's Ninja7, let's get into it. Mistweaver Monk is looking to reclaim its throne as a healing powerhouse thanks to a returning powerful playstyle, a surprisingly good tier set, and new synergistic talents. Primary goal of this build is to execute massive HPS ramps once every minute using Ulon, and to maintain heavy hot coverage during the downtime to gain value from talents like Tear of Morning and Invigorating Mists. First things first, the stats priority you'll want is haste equals crit, then verse, then mastery. Haste will allow you to execute smoother ramps and react faster, but too much of it can accelerate mana usage with this build. Crit is a powerful stat when it comes to its raw healing conversion, so find your comfortable haste point and then focus on crit. Verse is also a strong scaler for your heals, but gets outweighed by crit. Finally, Mastery has seen some buffs and procs often enough to where you shouldn't be too fussed if a piece of gear has it, but you don't seek it out. Now, sticking with gear, it's worth mentioning our tier set. Our 2-piece gives a 10% buff to the healing of Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist. These hots already have some great synergy in our talents, so this is more of a reason to focus on maintaining them. The 4 set makes any Vivify's cast on targets with either of these hots extend the duration of them by 3 seconds. Each hot can only be extended once, but that extension will add up to a lot of extra healing. And this already gives us our primary core spells that we're going to be playing around. Starting with the primary spell Renewing Mist, a 20-second hot that we want as many of active at all times. This is the fuel that keeps our fire burning, and it also racks up some nice HPS over its duration. For this reason, try to never sit at 2 charges. Enveloping Mist is a 6-second hot that is the proverbial fire that we play around. This hot does so much healing and also causes its target to take 30% more healing from you, but normally has a longer cast time and costs a good bit of mana. A lot of talents in this build are chosen to circumvent both of these drawbacks. Next up is Vivify, a chunky spot heal that will fan the flames of our hots while extending their value and keeping health bars topped up. Finally, we have Soothing Mist, which I haven't really mentioned yet, but it allows us to bypass the cast time of both Vivify and Enveloping Mist. And moving on to the talents, there will be an import string down in the description below, so make sure and grab that as you watch this video. Most of our talent choices are designed to enhance the power of these 4 core spells. The easiest way to do so is by extending the duration of these hots, which is what our new talent Lotus Infusion does for Renewing Mist, turning the 20-second hot into a 22-second hot, allowing us to milk more value out of each one. It also boosts the healing done to allies with this hot on them by 8%. There's also Mist Wrap, which turns Enveloping Mist's 6-second duration into a 7-second duration, and it boosts the healing bonus from 30% to 40%, furthering its healing value a ton. There's also a returning favorite from Dragonflight, Peer into Peace. This lets us channel Soothing Mist for 4 more seconds, but more importantly makes us no longer be locked to a single target inside of the Soothing Mist channel. This is excellent for swapping targets after we've topped someone up, and also to blanket multiple people in Enveloping Mists. One other extremely integral talent to understand is Rapid Diffusion. This will spawn 6-second Renewing Mist onto a random ally every time that we cast an Enveloping Mist. This makes it so that as long as we're pressing Enveloping Mist every few seconds alongside using our 2 Renewing Mist charges, our Renewing Mist count should stay pretty high throughout the whole fight. The 2 massively powerful talents that make this whole build possible are Invigorating Mists and Tear of Morning. These both grow in strength the more Renewing Mist that you have active, while also providing synergy between Renewing Mist and both Vivify and Enveloping Mist. Invigorating Mist makes anyone that has a Renewing Mist on them receive a chunk of healing whenever we cast Vivify. This is often called Vivify Cleaving, and it's important to note that the healing amount that each person beyond 5 targets receives is diminishing, but you'll still do more raw healing with the more Renewing Mists out. Tear of Morning makes anyone that has a Renewing Mist on them receive a chunk heal whenever you cast an Enveloping Mist. This amount is equal to 12% of an Enveloping Mist total healing, so having 8 1/3 Renewing Mist active means you're basically getting a free Enveloping Mist worth of healing every time that you cast it. Now you see the importance of maintaining a high number of renewing mists, right? And since we're going to be channeling Soothing Mist so often, you will also need to make sure and set down your Jade Serpent statue before the fight starts to gain bonus value throughout the encounter. Now, for more new War Within goodies, the largest healing increase comes from the Conduit of the Celestial's Hero Talent Tree. This tree gives us a new mini cooldown in Celestial Conduit that does a fair amount of healing over 3.6 seconds. You also gain a large amount of healing from Temple Training, which boosts Vivify and Enveloping Mist by 6%. There are a lot of other free healing sources that come from this tree, but most of them are passive or come from casting our other spells in a way that we already likely will be, such as casting Vivify in order to proc Swin, followed by an Enveloping Mist to proc Nitzao. However, there are some that are a bit more complicated to proc that don't just happen from our normal rotation, like Ulon, which procs after we consume 10 stacks of Shaylun's Gift. And this passive is very powerful, so tracking when you're going to have it active would be a very good idea. Alright, enough about talents, let's talk about the rotation. Well, in order to do that, it's important to note that we have two phases of our healing, which are our ramps and our downtime. The first and arguably most important phase is your ramps. This build isn't called the Ulon ramp build for a reason. It has that name because, well, we ramp our healing by casting Ulon. Thanks to Gift of the Celestials, we can cast Ulon once every minute. And for those 12 seconds that Ulon is out, she will heal alongside you and make your Enveloping Mist cost half mana. As a bonus, every time you cast Enveloping Mist, while she's out, she's going to heal 5 of your allies near your target with an Enveloping Breath, which will also increase their healing received from you by another 10%. So let's break down what that ramp will look like by showing you the cast sequence. The first step is to buff yourself as much as you can to make the ramp as explosive as possible. The two buffs that we need to set up before summoning Ulon are Xiaoao's Lesson, which you get from casting Shaylun's Gift, and Secret Infusion that you get from buffing one of your spells with Thunder Focus Tea. Before the Shaylun's cast is finished, you can activate Thunder Focus Tea since it doesn't require a global cooldown to use, and then cast a Renewing Mist on an ally with the next global. This will buff that Renewing Mist, making it last 10 extra seconds, but also give you a haste buff from Secret Infusion, which can help you spit out the Enveloping Mist faster. Next up is the part where Ulon comes in. Summoning Ulon will give you a further haste buff thanks to Invoker's Delight. And then you start a Soothing Mist and cast around 5 Enveloping Mists, which thanks again to Peer into Peace, you can cast them around on different targets very quickly in a Soothing Mist channel. I say around 5 because circumstances may change as we will discuss shortly. These Enveloping Mists will spawn more Renewing Mists as well as blanketing the Raid and Enveloping Breath so you do more healing. Finally, you need to capitalize on all of these HOTS by starting a second Soothing Mist and casting Vivify until your HOTS eventually fall off, cleaving all of those Vivifies onto each Renewing Mist thanks to Invigorating Mists. Now, it's important to note that the timing of your ramps is crucial. For that reason, you'll want to time the very beginning of this whole ramp so that the damage that your raid is taking happens right before you start the capitalizing phase. This is the peak of your ramp, and it takes roughly 7 seconds to get to this point depending on your haste and speed of execution. This means you should ideally start your ramp between 6 to 7 seconds before the peak of damage occurs for the best results. So once again, to show you what that looks like, you're going to cast Shaylun's Gift, and then Thunder Focus Tea a Renewing Mist, summon Ulon, start a Soothing Mist channel, cast 5 Enveloping Mists, and right at this point, the peak of the damage should be happening to your raid, and this is when the peak of your healing starts. So at this point, you're going to start a second Soothing Mist channel or maintain that first one and just start casting Vivifies on allies that need healing. These Vivifies are going to cleave, you're going to have so many HOTS ticking, and you're going to be doing so much healing, and that is why the timing matters. Now, this is just the sequence of spells that you cast, but equally important is who you cast them on. For the Enveloping Mists, you'll obviously want them on different allies so that you can spread your Enveloping Breaths and Mists around. The highest value targets for these Enveloping Mists are anyone that is missing more health than the rest of the raid, anyone that has dots or debuffs that will make them take more damage over the ramp, and the active tanks, since they are the least likely to be overhealed with all else equal. However, this season, our tier set adds another high value target for us if none of the other reasons apply. This being your most likely ideal enveloping mist targets, which are your allies that already have renewing mists on them, which I will explain shortly. But after casting your enveloping mist, you move on to your vivifies. Although we're doing a lot of invigorating mist cleave healing, it's very important to note that the actual vivify cast itself does a large chunk of healing that we don't want to go to waste. So, just like enveloping mist, prioritize at-risk low health bars and allies with debuffs on them. However, in most cases, when no one's in immediate danger, your highest value targets will be the allies that you just applied enveloping mist to. The whole purpose of applying enveloping mists to the allies that already have renewing mists on them is because this gives them a very high chance of still having both of these hots on them when we are casting these vivifies. This is where the tier set comes in, which makes the vivify cast extend the duration of renewing mist and enveloping mist on its target. So if you're able to cast Vivify on each enveloping mist target, then you can extend that powerful 7-second hot up to 10 seconds, getting a ton of bonus value for the simple price of being smart about your cast targets. If the renewing mist hasn't jumped to another target by that time, you can also extend its duration by 3 seconds as well. So just to reiterate, this is not necessary, but by lining up your enveloping mist onto people with renewing mist, you give yourself the opportunity to increase both of their duration with a single vivify. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, not every ramp will look the same. Sometimes you'll have to move during it, or sometimes you'll just mess it up or not have timings right. As for movement, always prioritize dodging mechanics that will kill you over padding. A dead healer does no healing. For the other reasons, I've made some common variations to the ramp to help you understand how to handle different situations effectively and give you some ideas on how and why you may adapt certain ways. The first variation is simply moving your 5th enveloping mist in your ramp into your 2nd soothing mist channel. This comes up a ton and is not the end of the world at all. In fact, it might even be a better ramp. This variation comes up a lot, especially when you have to move during the first soothing mist. So if you do end up having to sidestep or roll in between your enveloping mists, just know that it's totally fine to continue in the 2nd soothing mist. The next variation may come up quite a bit for you, especially when you're just starting to learn the ramp, but it also has good uses as well. With this variation, we are using the Thunder Focus Tea mid-ramp instead of beforehand. As you know, we normally use Thunder Focus Tea on a renewing mist at the start of the ramp to gain a haste buff. But what if we accidentally used both renewing mist charges right before we need to start the ramp? Or what if there's still a few seconds on Thunder Focus Tea's cooldown timer because we didn't press it right off cooldown between ramps? Well, that's where this variation comes in. Yes, you won't be as quick to spit out the enveloping mist thanks to no haste buff, but the crit buff that you gain from Thunder Focus Teeing an enveloping mist will make up for it on the back end of the ramp. Also worth mentioning is that this variation of the ramp is very explosive during Lust, since you don't get as much value from the Secret Infusion haste buff anyways. The final variation that I want to talk about is one that you should really get used to, since it's a very optimal way to set yourself up for success, and that is simply by channeling a few seconds of Mana Tea right before you start the whole ramp process. Now, you don't need to go buck wild drinking 10 plus stacks, but instead just drink a few so that you cover yourself with a mana reduction during the time that you cast Ulon, since that is such a mana expensive spell, and then the built-in mana reduction from Ulon will carry your efficiency during the ramp itself. Now, I know I've been talking about the ramp for a very long time, but this is where a large portion of our heals come from. So if you mess this up, then it will hurt your overall healing big time. For this reason, you'll want to either look at logs before you start a fight or get a few pulls in to fully understand where the peaks and raid damage taken are, and then line up your Ulon ramps to start about 6 to 7 seconds before that damage event so that you sponge up all that damage as healing. Just because your ramps are very important toward your success does not mean that the downtime is any less important. If you play the downtime correctly, you will have more renewing mist during your ramp and more mana to work with. The first thing that I want to point out is timings. Your Ulon cooldown is 1 minute, so in most cases, you'll be doing a Ulon ramp every 1 minute. And since you use Thunder Focus Tea to start the ramp and it has a 30-second cooldown, you will need to use it right once it comes off cooldown so that it's ready to use in time for the next ramp. This Thunder Focus Tea should be used on Enveloping Mist if you need the healing in that moment, or on Renewing Mist if you don't. Let's next talk about mana. Since we no longer have Cloud of Focus to carry our mana efficiency, Mana Tea becomes our only real tool to not go Since our Ulon ramp is already pretty mana efficient and we don't want to waste precious ramp time sipping on that good, the downtime becomes the most valuable time to drink Mana Tea. Now in Dragonflight, it was incredibly effective to take short sips of Mana Tea because the mana reduction buff would only last until Cloud of Focus kicked in. Once again, not having Cloud of Focus changes things. You still don't want to drink all 20 stacks as once, as this would mean that you're basically AFK for a long period of time while your HOTS are ticking away getting little value. Instead, I found it best to follow a few rules with your Mana Tea. Number 1, if healing needs to be done, then wait to drink Mana Tea. Top up that person and then get to drinking. Number 2, drinking after a Soothing Mist channel ends is a great way to go about it. Don't cancel a short Soothing Mist, drink, then do another Soothing Mist just to drink again. Instead, drink about 5 to 8 stacks, do a full Soothing Mist or until everyone is topped up, and then drink again. And finally, number 3. Try not to overlap the Mana Tea's mana reduction buff. If you drink 8 stacks and then cast a single spell and then drink again, you're just going to be wasting those stacks. Yes, the mana return is great and all, but the mana reduction is even better. Now with all of that upkeep out of the way, let's talk about your base rotation in your downtime. Luckily, it's very simple and very straightforward. During the downtime between ramps, you'll want to cast one or both Renewing Mist charges on allies that need healing, and then you're going to start a Soothing Mist on one of them. Cast Enveloping Mist, and then Vivify. If that ally still needs healing after the first Vivify, you can cast a second one, but if they are healthy after the first Vivify and another ally needs healing, cast an Enveloping Mist on that ally, and then once again, based on how healthy they are, cast one or more Vivifies, and rinse and repeat until your Soothing Mist ends. Then you can sip Mana Tea if there's not much healing needing to be done in that moment, or start this process again by casting Renewing Mist on the lowest ally and rinse and repeat with the Soothing Mist. What this is doing is making sure that you are never sitting at 2 charges of Renewing Mist available, while also casting Enveloping Mist to keep your Renewing Mist count high thanks to Rapid Diffusion. After that, casting Vivifies to extend the HOT with our tier set while also healing them up to safe health levels. The Enveloping Mist will be cleaving with Tear of Mourning, and the Vivifies will also cleave with Invigorating Mist, so it's not just the one target that you're going to be healing. Also, if your mana bar allows you to, and if your raid's health bars are all pretty steady with no one in too much danger of dying, you can also get pretty good healing by skipping the Vivifies altogether. So if this is the case, cast your Renewing Mist charges and then start a Soothing Mist channel and start casting Enveloping Mist around. If any health bars drop lower than the rest or are in danger of dying, stop spamming Enveloping Mist around and cast Vivifies onto them. This will use more mana, so be extra cautious. I also only really do this when I know that damage is about to hit the raid and I need to do a little mini ramp, but I don't have Ulon active. But knowing that you're able to do this is just a good tool to have on your belt. The downtime is also an excellent time to use Celestial Conduit. You don't really want to spend valuable ramp time channeling this spell, even though it does a good amount of healing. Instead, you want to offset it with your Ulon ramps. This also gains value the closer that you use this to the start of your ramp, since you're going to be calling all 4 August Celestials to assist you at the end of this channel. This will do a ton of healing and some shielding onto some of your allies, but most importantly, it's going to call on Ulon from your hero talent tree to come out and assist you. This is going to shave off a ton of time of your Renewing Mist cooldown and Thunder Focus Tea cooldown. So if you can line this up right before your ramp, you can get a ton of Renewing Mist out and active throughout your entire ramp. Outside of that, you're just going to repeat these rotations depending on the circumstances of the fight, such as your mana bar, the raid's current health, and upcoming mechanics, and you'll be at the next ramp in no time. And with that, we conclude my raid guide for Mistweaver in Season 1 of The War Within. It can take a bit to get the hang of, but if you have any questions, then make sure and join my Discord down in the description below. There you will be able to ask me or my community any questions you might have, and we will get you all the answers that you need. While you're down there, consider liking the video as it took many hours to make. Also, check if you're subscribed so you don't miss any future Mistweaver updates or healing videos, and consider checking out the Patreon link down below. These guys did, and they are the reason why I'm able to make videos like this one. So a huge shout out to them. Thank you all for the support. My name's Ninja7. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.